I never imagined that the heroic bravery of the Tuskegee Airmen could define my family's legacy. I will never forget the day everything fell apart. The air was thick with tension at the family reunion, whispers and rumors swirling like thick smoke. My heart raced. I could feel it pounding against my chest. I wanted to hide, to vanish. We had gathered to honor my grandfather, a legendary pilot from the Tuskegee Airmen. But something felt off. Very off. As I looked around, faces I'd known my whole life were twisted in confusion, their eyes darting nervously. Their whispers grew louder, more frantic. "Did you hear the news? How could he keep this from us?" The words sliced through me, cold and sharp. I had the unsettling feeling that I was standing on the edge of a hidden precipice, teetering between my family's glorified past and an unthinkable secret. The stories of my grandfather's bravery were legendary. He had flown through enemy fire, his hands steady on the controls even when bullets rained around him. I imagined him up there, high above the clouds, feeling the rush of freedom, the weightlessness of soaring in the sky. But here, in this room filled with shame and uncertainty, the tales shifted. He was more than just a hero. There were layers, dark ones wrapped tightly around our family name. I searched for my mother, seeking comfort in her presence, but her face was pale, drawn tight with worry. When I finally found her, she was muttering something under her breath, a mixture of denial and despair. The way she trembled made my stomach churn. "Mom, what's going on?" I whispered, gripping her arm. She hesitated, her eyes glistening, then looked away, as if she could somehow escape whatever was haunting us. In that moment, the fragile facade of our family crumbled. Could the man I revered as a hero actually be hiding something terrible? The room fell silent, everyone waiting for the next move, like players in a high-stakes game. My heart thudded in my ears. I could feel the anticipation, a thick, almost suffocating anxiety. What was the truth? What were they all so afraid of? I couldn't escape the sinking feeling that the hero we'd adored might have had a darker side. But what could it be? The unanswered questions swirled in my mind, mixing with dread and anger. I wanted to scream. I needed answers. Hey! Before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button. It really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. The kitchen was buzzing with the clinks of dishes and the low murmurs of muted conversations, but it all felt distant to me. I stood aside, disentangled from the fabric of my family, watching as my relatives formed small clusters, voices hushed. Each group seemed to pulse with a nervous energy, a palpable dread that wove around them like a thick fog. I slipped into the hallway, needing a moment away from the chaos. I leaned against the cool wall, my heart still racing as I replayed my mother's haunted expression in my mind. The truth felt like a lead weight in my chest, and I thought about the stories my grandfather had etched into our family album, each tale an emblem of courage and tenacity. Yet now, those tales felt tinged with shadows, the golden sheen of heroism blurring into something ominous. The front door creaked open, and I turned to see my older cousin, Marcus, trudging inside. His face reflected a mixture of frustration and sorrow, emotions I was all too familiar with in that moment. "What do you think is going on?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "I wish I knew," I admitted. "Mom won't tell me anything. It's like she's wrapped in a fog of secrets." He ran a hand through his hair, his face softening. "Look, I think we need to find out for ourselves. This legacy means too much to stay in the dark." Despite the heaviness of our situation, his words sparked a flicker of hope within me. If Marcus was willing to dive into the unknown alongside me, maybe we could uncover the truth together. Just as I was about to respond, an old family friend, Ms. Johnson, shuffled into the hallway. She had been my grandmother's best friend, her presence often bringing warmth even in the coldest of times. Her kind, wrinkled face looked especially frail today, but her eyes shimmered with empathy. "You too look troubled," she murmured, her voice soft yet filled with a quiet strength. "Come sit with me for a moment." In the dim light of the hallway, I felt comforted by her presence, like a balm over the turmoil that churned inside me. We followed her into a small sitting room. The air was thick with the scent of lavender, a fragrance I linked with memories of my grandmother's embrace. Ms. Johnson settled heavily into an armchair, motioning for us to sit beside her. "Sometimes," she began, her tone grave yet soothing, "truth carries burdens that are hard to bear. Your grandfather was an extraordinary man, but even the bravest souls can harbor fears and regrets." I nodded, feeling as if each word was cutting deeper into the layers of my confusion. "What do you mean?" I pressed, my voice trembling at the thought of what secrets might lie ahead. She paused, allowing the weight of history to settle around us. "There were times during the war, dear, when choices had to be made. Difficult decisions that were steeped in darkness, for both the soldiers and their families." Her gaze drifted to the window, the light playing against her silver hair. "It's not uncommon for heroes to have shadows trailing behind them." Before I could articulate my next thought, the soft chime of the doorbell echoed through the tension of the household. My heart jolted. What if this was the moment that would tip the balance further into chaos? Ms. Johnson looked at me, and I could see the worry that mirrored my own in her eyes. "Stay here," Marcus urged. With a determined nod, he moved toward the front door, and I followed closely behind as he opened the door. A chill seeped in, curling around my edges like a turbulent wind. Standing there was a man I had never seen before, tall, with an air of authority, yet a palpable sense of vulnerability lingered beneath his demeanor. "I'm looking for the family of Elijah Jackson," he stated, his voice firm yet his eyes ricocheting with uncertainty. "Who are you?" I asked, suddenly feeling as if we had stepped deeper into an abyss I wasn't prepared for. "This is important. I have information, something you all need to know." His gaze flicked between Marcus and me, pleading as if we were the last vestige of hope in a stormy sea. The room fell silent, the air thickening with palpable tension. I stood motionless, my heart hammering in anticipation, knowing that this could yield answers or plunge us deeper into hidden horrors. The man's presence radiated an unsettling energy, as if he were a messenger bearing both truth and burden. "My name is Calvin Rayner," he confessed, taking a cautious step into the threshold of our home. "I served with your grandfather during the war." I felt the air grow heavier, the walls of our family history pressing in on me. "What do you mean?" I blurted out, the urgency in my voice betraying my need for clarity. "Please, let me explain," he said, raising a hand in a gesture that was part plea, part hesitation. "There's a lot to unpack. It's not just about bravery. Your grandfather, he made choices that altered lives, including his own." Marcus shifted beside me, eyes narrowed, the tension in his jaw revealing his skepticism or perhaps a deeper fear of what revelations might come next. "What kind of choices?" he asked, his voice steady, yet threaded with concern. Calvin inhaled sharply, the weight of memories playing across his features like an old movie reel. "We were pilots, yes, but we were also men grappling with our own demons and the realities of war." His voice cracked as a shadow seemed to pass over his eyes. "There were missions where some of us didn't return. Your grandfather Elijah had to make decisions to ensure the survival of the others, even if it sometimes meant sacrificing his own conscience. He left behind pieces of himself." He faltered slightly, struggling with emotions that threatened to spill over. "Pieces that you all might never understand." A shudder ran through me at the thought that my grandfather, the man who had become a legend in our family, might have made choices that tainted that heroism. Did he? I couldn't complete my thought, the notion swirling in a pot of anxiety. Calvin took a step closer, his expression earnest. He was loyal and brave, but also haunted by the weight of what he carried. "There are tale stories he never spoke of that could change how you view your legacy." Ms. Johnson, who had quietly watched from her chair, finally spoke up, her voice trembling. "Elijah was always proud, but he also had things he buried deep. He thought that some memories were too dark for the light of day. Her eyes locked onto mine, unblinking. But those shadows, they deserved to be told that I felt as if the ground beneath me had been pulled away, exposing a chasm of uncertainty. The heroic tales I had cherished now felt like a fragile facade hiding something much darker. What do we do with this? I asked quietly, unsure if I wanted to learn more or if ignorance would be a kinder fate. Calvin stepped forward, his tone sincere yet firm. You need to know your family's full history. It's the only way to honor those who served. And how do you know this? What makes you feel entitled to invade our lives? Marcus snapped, stepping into the protective role that felt intrinsic to him. Because I was there. I witnessed it myself. Calvin challenged, his eyes igniting with passion. Because I didn't come back whole. We faced immense pressure, and I too have carried things I wish I could forget. But Elijah wanted you all to know. He wanted you to have his truth. Not just stories of valor. And my heart raced as a storm of emotions roiled inside me: fear, anger, confusion, but also a thin thread of connection emerging in the desolate space we inhabited. I couldn't linger on the ramifications of what Calvin was saying. Not when the present seemed so perilously close to unraveling. Give us time, Marcus said, deferring to my uncertainty. Let us think. Calvin nodded slowly, a flicker of understanding crossing his features. I get it. They'll be around. You can find me. His gaze lingered for a moment before he stepped back into the chill, the door closing softly behind him. The silence enveloped us, a casket thick with unspoken words. I turned to Marcus, desperately searching for any semblance of clarity. What do we do now? I don't know, but we can't ignore this, he replied, his brows furrowing in thought. It's too important. As we re-entered the heart of the house, I could see the muted conversations had transformed into a cacophony of anxiety, eyes darting, whispers trailing off into silence as we approached. I felt the weight of everyone's gaze, a chorus of unasked questions filling the room. Suddenly, Ms. Johnson's voice broke through the chaos. The truth is not just one side of a story, dear children. It intertwines with love and pain, honor and regret. I turned to her, feeling lost in a labyrinth of conflicting emotions. But how do we live with that truth? By accepting it as part of the journey, she whispered, a slight tremor in her voice. Only then can healing begin. Before I could respond, an unexpected sound caught my attention, a muffled sob from down the hall, drawing me toward the source with an urgency that sent shivers down my spine. I exchanged a glance with Marcus, knowing something deeper and far more personal was unfolding. Something that could change everything. As we approached the dimly lit room, the door slightly ajar, my heart raced with dread and anticipation. Whatever lay beyond that portal could reveal all the hidden truths our family had avoided, truths that could either bind us together or tear us apart forever. As I pushed the door open, the soft sobs grew clearer, wrapping around me like a cold embrace. The sight before me sent a wave of dread crashing through my chest. There, curled on the bed, was my younger sister, Lila, her face buried in her hands. Her usually bright eyes were like storm clouds, heavy with sorrow. Lila, I whispered, crossing the threshold with trepidation. What's wrong? She lifted her tear-streaked face, her small frame trembling. I heard what that man said. Her voice was barely above a whisper, as if speaking loud would draw in the very shadows we were grappling with. Did Grandpa really do those things? My heart ached for her innocence, which seemed at that moment to teeter on the edge of an abyss. The path of our family's history now appeared laden with jagged stones that could bruise even the strongest souls. We don't know yet, I replied gently, trying to shield her from the harshness of uncertainty. But we have to talk about it. I hate it, Lila shouted suddenly, her voice breaking through the vulnerability like a shard of glass. He's still my grandpa. He's a hero to me. I don't want to know if he hurt people. I knelt by her side, my heart racing with the essence of a fierce protectiveness. I know. But Lila, sometimes being brave means facing scary truths. But why? Why can't we just live with the stories we love? She cried, the porcelain of her youth cracking under pressure. Because there are things that deserve to be understood, things that can help us heal, I urged, searching for the right words amid my own tumult. It's not about tarnishing his memory, but honoring it fully, even the parts that hurt. Lila looked away, biting her lip as fresh tears cascaded down her cheeks. In her despair, I could sense a familiar tug of firefighting that contrasted with my internal struggle. I hated the way Calvin's revelations loomed over us, creating fractures in the foundation of our familial love. Suddenly, the weight of my own emotions pushed against me. I wanted to shield Lila from the potential horror of our grandfather's past. Yet deep down, I also recognized that truth had its own gravitia lesson. I'd have to confront myself. "Can I stay here with you?" I asked, as much for my own comfort as hers. She nodded mutely, and I pulled her close, resting my chin on the top of her head. In that moment, something within me shifted. The fear and confusion were still there, but there was also an ember of resolve flickering in the chaos. A soft knock came from the door, and Marcus stepped in. His expression softened from his earlier resoluteness. "Hey," he said, his voice low, almost a whisper. "Can I join?" Lila turned to him, her tear-filled eyes searching for assurance in the storm. "What do we do, Marcus?" He crouched to meet her gaze, threading his fingers through his hair, mulling over the immense weight of the question. "We do what we always do. We talk about it and we lean on each other. That's what family is for." His reversal from protective brother to caring figure brought a moment of light into the darkened room. I felt a swell of pride as I watched him slide next to us, wrapping an arm around Lila's shoulders while giving me the silent promise of solidarity. "Well, figure it out," he reaffirmed, his voice steadier than mine felt. As I looked at both of them, I grappled with my own uncertainty. Would the truths we uncovered drive a wedge between us, or would they bring us closer? Just as I began to ponder the endless possibilities of our vulnerabilities, the sound of something crashing echoed through the house. A heavy thud followed by silence, deep and suffocating. "What was that?" Lila exclaimed, her eyes shifting from me to Marcus in a mixture of fear and disbelief. "I don't know," Marcus said, his brow furrowing in concern. "Stay here." He shot me a quick glance, and without thinking, I followed him down the dark hallway. Each step felt like a weight, a fearful heartbeat thrumming against the stillness around us. The noise had come from Dad's study, a room that had always held an air of untouchable secrets. The doorknob turned easily, revealing the dimly lit space. Papers were strewn across the floor, a disarray that mirrored the chaos we felt inside us. In the center of the room, the old wooden desk leaned askew, as if pushed hard by unseen hands, and on the ground lay a family album, pages fluttering open like trapped birds desperate to escape. "What happened here?" Marcus breathed, panic creeping into his voice. As I crouched to pick up the album, a photograph slipped free, landing face up on the floor. My heart sank as I recognized the immediate younger version of my grandfather, flanked by two figures I had never seen before, their expressions hardened by war but also filled with a bond one couldn't understand. And then, beneath the photograph, something glimmered faintly, a half-burned letter peeking from the corner, the words illegible but its presence undoubted. "Look," I whispered, pointing to the letter. The air around us felt electric, as if the weight of history bore down on us, begging to be unearthed. Marcus knelt beside me as we reached for the letter together. The gravity of the moment pressed heavily upon us, threatening to reveal a truth that could shatter everything we thought we knew. Before we could pull it free, a voice came from behind us, an unexpected, eerie accusation that silenced the room. "What do you think you're doing?" I turned sharply. Calvin stood at the door, shadowed and resolute, the tension in his stance akin to the storm brewing within the walls of our family legacy. In his eyes, I saw the depth of pain, not only his own but that which had echoed across generations, threatening to change our lives forever. The air grew thick with tension as I registered Calvin's presence, the doorframe cutting him off from the light of the hallway, a man shaped by conflict, both within and without. He seemed poised to unleash a tempest, his brow furrowed and hands clenched at his sides. For a moment, the world around evaporated, leaving only the weight of his words, laden with unspoken history. "What do you think you're doing?" he repeated, his voice lower now, laced with a defiance that was both familiar and frightening. In that instant, I felt a strange pull. Should I stand my ground, face him head-on, or pull Lila and Marcus away from the storm? I began, but the roaring doubt in my thoughts drowned out my voice before I could utter another word. Lila's grip tightened on my arm, her tiny fingers trembling. I glanced at her, her wide eyes darting between Calvin and the chaos that unfolded around us. This was a moment where fear could either bind us together or push us into separate corners of despair. Calvin, we were just looking, I said, striving for a diplomacy that could plug the growing rift. Looking for what? Answers? Truths? You're treading in waters far too deep for you, he retorted. His voice a stern reminder that not every revelation was meant to be uncovered. The way he directed his gaze toward the letter sent shivers down my spine, not only for its contents but for what it represented. Calvin, Marcus interjected, his protective instincts rising. If something is here, we have a right to know. This family. Family? Calvin laughed bitterly, the sound echoing with the weight of past grievances. You think blood binds us? You have no idea what binds a family together or, perhaps, tears it apart. His gaze pierced through us, building walls we couldn't afford to lean on. It struck me then, this wasn't just a revelation about our grandfather. It was about the fractured relationships among us, about secrets that could slash deeper than any physical divide. I took a breath to steady myself and, sensing the flicker of defiance rising like a spark, insisted, we won't be frightened into silence. Not anymore. His expression hardened, the remnants of vulnerability quickly masked by a storm of emotions. You want to uncover the truth? You must be prepared to deal with the consequences. You think knowledge is power? You'll find just how heavy that burden can become. The thought lodged in my throat like bitterness. I had once believed ignorance could be a shield, a way to protect myself and Lila from the painful complexities of our shared narrative. But with every revelation, I could feel the chains of silence binding us growing weaker, while the fear of the unknown surged like a tide. Lila's small voice broke through, trembling yet firm. But if we don't search for the truth, how do we know who we are? Maybe it'll help us understand, maybe we'll be stronger. Her words, innocent yet profound, hung in the air. Marcus and I exchanged a look of surprise, and for the briefest moment, I could see how her bravery mirrored that of the heroes we dared to question. Calvin remained silent, his walls fortified yet betrayed by the flicker of his eyes, hinting at vulnerability nudging against his defenses. Before the silence could stretch into further confrontation, I leaned toward the letter, grasping it with renewed determination. I could almost feel the stories chained to its Tories that had been waiting in the dark for voices to finally set them free. Help us understand, Calvin. This is our story too. Don't shut us out. He took a step closer, and his breathing intensified, like he was wrestling with an inner tempest. If you really want this, if you're prepared for the fallout, then you need to know one thing, he stated, his voice gravelly as he leaned down to meet my gaze. Sometimes the truth hurts more than the lies. Unfurling the letter, guilt for pursuing chaos washed over me for a brief moment. I was ready for answers, yet tremors of uncertainty rushed through me. The ink was faded, but the words screamed for resolution. I need to confront my past. The rest of the message remained obscured by ash, fragments whispering bittersweet secrets that could unravel the very fabric of our lives. Stop! Calvin's voice boomed, suddenly desperate. Don't read it. But before anyone could react, I heard the sharp inhalation of Lila, her instinctive response standing out against the backdrop of dread. My heart raced. I had never seen her so torn between fear and the need for understanding. Just as I began to grasp the edges of the letter with tentative hands, the deafening clash of shattered glass erupted from the window, followed by a frail, yet piercing scream from outside. All heads turned, swept up in a sudden storm of curiosity and dread. No! Lila, stay back! Marcus shouted, instinctively shielding her as we rushed toward the sound. Abandoning the secrets of the past for a moment forged in the urgency of the present, as I stepped outside. The shock hit me. Her neighbor, Mrs. Lehman, lay sprawled in her front yard, her expression wide with terror as she pointed toward the trees lining the edge of the property. She gasped, There are strangers. They're looking for a way in. The fear in her voice sliced through the veil of family secrets, raising questions far darker than the shadows that haunted our home. My heart raced with the hidden fear that overshadowed everything we had just unearthed. Somewhere, we were tethered to a world far more complex than the legacy of our grandfather's past. Without a word, I felt the grip of bravery pulse through me. Whatever truth awaited us, it was now overshadowed by an immediate threat of terror that promised to rewrite our lives once more. Behind me, I sensed Calvin's presence shift, becoming something more than a mere guardian against the past. In that moment, the fabric of our family began to warp, reshaping our path ahead in ways we could never have imagined. As my heart hammered in my chest, I instinctively took a step back, eyes darting between Mrs. Lehman and the tree line she had pointed to. The shadows danced like wraiths beneath the thick canopy, making it nearly impossible to discern if there were truly intruders lurking, or if fear had twisted her imagination into a frenzied nightmare. "Stay inside," Calvin barked, his authoritative tone cutting through the chaos. It reminded me of the way he used to protect us from our father's temper as children. In that moment, he transformed from the confrontational figure I'd faced only moments prior into a reluctant shield, something I hadn't anticipated when we stood on the precipice of unearthing the truth. "Marcus, take Lila inside now," I commanded, though my own voice trembled slightly. "But no arguments," I snapped, my heart aching as I abruptly turned to face the haunting treeline. This felt bigger than any of us, an unfurling storm beyond the family legacy we had only just begun to peel away. Lila clung tightly to Marcus, her gaze wide and frightened, and as they retreated, I felt another pang of tension. This wasn't fair to her. Steeling myself, I stepped closer to Mrs. Lehman. "Are you sure you saw something?" I asked, though I half believed her imagination had conjured shadows from her fears. Her eyes darted back to the trees, scanning. "I swear I saw them. It's like they're just waiting for the right moment. We need to call the police. They could be dangerous." The authority in her voice echoed the frantic whispers of others who had fled into the night, seeking refuge from a past that didn't forgive easily. Strangers in search of someone or something threatening to intertwine our fates with theirs. My pulse raced, but deep down a flicker of defiance ignited. "Let's do it." Then I said, my tone firm, despite the dread bubbling beneath my skin. "You go inside, call for help. They'll head to the trees." "I'm not letting you go alone," Calvin declared, suddenly at my side. He seemed to morph, his protective instincts reigniting, and I could feel the remnants of his earlier vulnerability hardening into resolve, a warrior born from family loss and yet driven by an unyielding need to shield as we moved toward the edge of the property. The sense of impending confrontation thickened in the air, a tangible entity hovering just beyond our sight. The rustle of leaves hinted at movement sounds that had no business existing against the backdrop of our fractured family dynamics. "Maybe they want the letter," I whispered, half to myself and half to Calvin, whose brow knitted tighter. "Or something worse," his voice murmured sharply, as we reached the edge of the clearing. The darkness swallowed us, coiling around our forms as we stepped into the underbrush. With the moonlight filtering weakly through the branches above, we strained to listen, sharing the same worry that perhaps someone stranger's creeping ever closer was already aware of what truths lay undone between us. I sensed Calvin's wariness beside me. For all his bravado, I could feel him battling his own demons. "You know," he began, his voice barely above a whisper, "this conflict won't only test our family. It will force us to face it, to confront everything our grandfather's legacy meant to him." I glanced at him, confused. "What do you mean?" He hesitated, searching for the right words amidst the angst swirling around us. "Those airmen, they didn't just fight battles in the sky, they fought battles within. Against prejudice, against doubt. Sometimes the fight is more about what you can overcome than against whom. If anyone is looking for answers, I suspect it's them. Or something they believe lies within our family." His words clung in the air like a long-forgotten memory, and I realized the layers of history buried deep within me, echoing back to the heart of who I thought we were. The very ground shifted as a sense of familiarity mingled with forgotten pride fight forged from struggles they never lost sight of. Just as I opened my mouth to respond, a sharp crack sliced the air, followed by a rush of movement in the darkness. I whipped my head toward Calvin, my heart pounding as a figure emerged from the underbrush clad in dark clothing, eyes glinting with an urgency I couldn't decipher. "You shouldn't be here," he hissed, the essence of danger woven into his voice as he darted toward us, and out of instinct, I took a step back. Calvin pushed forward, an instinctive agent of fearlessness, pushing me behind him, shielding my retreat. "Who are you?" Calvin demanded, nerves coiling tightly. "Doesn't matter," the intruder snapped. "What you need to know is they're coming. Get inside and lock the doors." Before I could grasp what lay behind his warning, Calvin was already advancing, his protective instincts pulling him closer to the threat. "We aren't afraid of you or anyone else. If you want to fight, you'll have to take it from me first." Suddenly, the atmosphere shifted, rippling with palpable tension and urgency, and there was a realization that this unexpected stranger posed a new dilemma, one laden with questions about those who had pursued truths darker than our own family's secrets. My thoughts spiraled as uncertainty coated the air, the promise of impending confrontation woven among shadows bending beneath the weight of our fraught destinies. And as the tension reached a crescendo, laced with decisions that could alter the very path of our stories, I suddenly feared that maybe just maybe you had perched ourselves on the edge of a secret far greater than any of us could imagine, ready to crumble into chaos at any moment, leaving our legacy dangling in the unseen void. The air hummed with unspoken threats, and I wished I could gather up every shard of certainty surrounding my family legacy. Its shadows now draped thickly over us. "Who's coming?" I demanded, stepping alongside Calvin despite the instinct to retreat. The intruder's eyes darted behind him, narrowing as if he could sense something in the dark, something terrifyingly real. "You think what happened with the letter was the worst of it? No, there's more to the formless nightmares you're dealing with. They're not just after the past, they want to finish what started long ago." Calvin's jaw tightened as he stepped forward, his chest rising and falling in heavy breaths. "What do you know about our family?" he pressed, his voice steady, tinged with authority. The stranger hesitated, scanning the edges of the clearing before shifting his weight onto one foot. "I know too much, and I know all the wrongs people have faced because of pride and secrets. Your family isn't merely entwined in history. Your lineage is a key linked to present reckoning." His voice layered with urgency, as if the truth twisted in the air like curling smog around you as my heart pounded, realization blending with fear. "What do you mean? What do you want from us?" I asked, adrenaline surging through me as I grazed the memories of whispered stories from my childhood. Murmurs from my mother about our ancestors etched in the shadows of forgotten towns, bravado under duress and courage where it should have faltered. The intruder hesitated, glancing again toward the tree line. "You have to trust me. You need to dig deeper into your grandfather's past. The truth behind the legacy isn't merely an ink splotch on paper, it's an everlasting battle against those who would rather rewrite it." Before we could press further, the sound of snapping twigs echoed from the trees, silencing all reason in our minds. The intruder stiffened, brow furrowing as shadows unfurled, creeping forward like an army of darkness preparing to strike. "What was that?" I whispered, clutching Calvin's arm. The sensation of dread coursed through my veins, an unwelcome reminder of familial anguish lingering in our intertwined histories. "Run!" the stranger yelled as figures crested the shadows, their forms shifting. Silhouettes whose intentions clouded in malevolence. Calvin spun to me, determination rife in his eyes. "We can't let them come any closer. We have to get inside." We bolted for the house, legs pumping as adrenaline turned our feet into blurs against the gravel path. I felt the fear clad tightly around me, mingling with the resoluteness fueled by the momentum, fervor ignited by the need to protect those still safe within the walls, like Lila and Marcus. Yet danger loomed just behind us, a foreboding tension that sank into the darkness, spurred on by the figure in the shadows. I risked a glance back, catching sight of the intruder grappling with the oncoming foes, a static dance of desperation. "Go!" he shouted through gritted teeth, But even from afar, I glimpsed the onslaught, the way his back arched with instinct to defend, to fight against the darkness that sought to swallow him whole. Calvin, we can't leave him, I cried, but the fear clawing at my throat felt insurmountable. We have to stay alive first, Calvin yelled back, eyes fixed on the house ahead. Another crack echoed from the foliage, popping like the sound of splintering wood as horror entwined our thoughts, luring us back into the devastation awaiting within our unfinished story. As we reached the porch steps, panic unleashed its full weight inside, a cacophony of questions rattling in my mind. How had we stumbled into such a tempest? And why was our family's legacy so dangerously entangled with the darkness closing in around us? Calvin shoved the door open, dragging me inside, where shadows danced in flickering light, merging with our thoughts. He quickly secured the lock, his breathing sharp in the sudden stillness that engulfed us. What is happening? I gasped, catching my breath. My brother ran a hand through his hair, eyes wide as he turned to me, shaking his head as if grappling with his own rising tide of fear. I don't know, but I do know we have to figure out what our grandfather's past means now. What kind of secret could instigate this? Before I could respond, Lila appeared in the doorway, her small frame silhouetted against the light behind her. She was clutching a worn box, the corners of her mouth trembling with a blend of uncertainty and bravery. I found this, she stammered, eyes darting between us. I thought it might be important that I leaned forward, heart racing, as she held it out. My fingers trembled as I reached for the box, the weight of family history grounded in her hands. The moment stretched, laden with the promise of impending storms yet to break, a revelation hovering just beyond comprehension. And as I lifted the lid, gasps filled the air, hearts strumming as a hidden truth threatened to swim into the light, drawn by secrets we hadn't anticipated. Inside, beneath layers of dust, was a collection of photographs, timeless snapshots of faces I had never seen. Yet their stares anchored a connection deep within. The weight of lost stories poured forth as whispers of betrayal echoed in the fragile atmosphere, tales woven into our legacy from long ago, festering unseen while time danced away. And at the very bottom of the box, nestled between the layers, a slip of paper glowed like a beacon of hope and dread. A name writ large enough to twist the very essence of who we believed ourselves to be, igniting a new hunger for truth, and setting us once more on a perilous journey where unlocking one mystery could veer us into chaos. Lila, I whispered, the world around us shifting. What did you just find? The hush of the room felt like a fragile cocoon, wrapping around us as we gathered closer, peering into the box that had become the altar of our unfolding fate. I could feel the tremor in Lila's hands as she fidgeted with the edges of the box, her young eyes reflecting an intensity beyond her years. Calvin leaned in, his curiosity igniting the flames of urgency. What's on the paper? He urged, though I could hear the tremor in his voice, his own mounting fear mixing with the thrill of discovery. I carefully lifted the slip of paper, its edges crumpled and yellowed with age, the ink faded yet still resolute. My breathing quickened as I scanned the name inscribed, Franklin L. Weston. A chill ran through me, echoing through the quiet of the room. I had heard this name whispered before, camouflaged in the fabric of family lore, but never had it seemed so real or so vital. Who is he? Calvin questioned, an undertone of disbelief threading through his inquiry. My eyes flicked to Lila. Do you remember the stories Mom would tell about our grandfather's friend? The one who would take them on adventures in the summer. She nodded slowly, brows furrowing in concentration. He lived in the big house by the lake. But they always said he was a hero and that Mom used to have pictures with him. I glanced back at the photographs spilling from the box. Faces staring out from the sepia tones, familiar and strange all at once. I recognized flashes of defiant grins on the faces of the Tuskegee Airmen, their bravery painted against the backdrop of a tumultuous past. I blinked, realization crystallizing like ice in my veins. These were not just shadowy figures of history. They were woven into the very fabric of my family's story. Calvin reached out for a photograph, his fingers brushing against the weathered surface. If they're connected to us, then maybe they fought not just in the skies but to protect something far greater. Something that's involved in the mess we've walked into. The intensity of the moment thickened the air. It was as if the weight of those who had come before USA lineage that had faced prejudices and peril was urging us to confront our scars and stand firm in the face of the unknown. Could this all be connected to why the intruder was here? I pondered aloud, my heart racing with the surge of possibility and the inescapable dread lacing my thoughts. What if our legacy has become a beacon for those wanting to exploit that history, to reclaim it for their own? Just then, a loud thud came from the back of the house, jolting us from our reverie. We froze, eyes widening in unison, the shadows tightening around us, twisting our thoughts once more into the suffocating veil of encroaching chaos. "Stay here," Calvin ordered, his voice smoothing over the fear like a protective cover. "They'll check it out." "No." I grasped his arm, urgency spilling from my lips. "We don't know what's out there. We have to stick together." But the resolve in his eyes was unyielding, a flicker of that same bravery I had seen in the men depicted in the photographs. "We don't have a choice. I can't let them in here." He turned and rushed to the back door, while Lila and I exchanged glances. Her uncertainty mirrored my own. A whirlwind of emotions spiraled within me: fear, confusion, that tender hope woven through the threads of our family's past. What if the courage of those before us was meant to carry us through this moment? What if we could channel it? With a nod to Lila, I set aside the photographs, the names momentarily forgotten as I followed Calvin, my instincts screaming that this time in our lives would forever shift the trajectory of who we were becoming. As Calvin pushed the door open, his silhouette framed against a stream of dusky light pouring in from the yard, I instinctively grabbed Lila's hand. I was back at the threshold of uncertainty, that familiar tug of dread mingling with the urgency of our search for answers. Just as Calvin stepped outside, a piercing cry cut through the stillness, a guttural, haunting sound that froze the air around us. "Calvin!" I screamed, adrenaline surging in my veins. My heart pounded in a chaotic rhythm as I rushed toward the door, pulling Lila along. The darkness felt alive, a predator circling closer, breathing down our necks. "Wait, don't!" Calvin's voice echoed, but the words were swallowed by the emerging shadows. In that moment, the weight of the box and the photographs faded as I plunged into the night with Lila at my side, a sheer magnitude of fear and a flickering flame of hope propelling us forward. We were stepping into the unknown once again, and I couldn't shake the feeling that the ripple of my family's legacy was about to collide with our present in an unimaginable way. As I stumbled onto the porch, I caught a glimpse of something in the gloom, a figure emerging from the underbrush. Its eyes locked onto me with a recognition that turned my blood to ice. The shock coursed through me as I gasped, realization crashing like waves against the shore. It was someone I had never expected to see again, someone whose identity could shatter the remnants of my understanding of family. "Who are you?" I whispered, my voice barely forming as dread coiled tight around my chest. Their lips curved into a sinister smile, the answer hanging in the darkness, a new chapter dawning with shadows that promised only more fractures along the ever-complicated path of our legacy. The figure stepped into a pool of light cast by the flickering porch lamp, revealing a face that sent my heart racing into a tempest of emotions. It was Carl, my estranged uncle, the very man who had disappeared from my life, like a ghost that my family had learned to forget. His presence sent a jolt of disbelief through me, as though the tangible world had swayed, blurring the lines between the past and present. Calvin's voice cracked in disbelief, the shattered remnants of our youthful bravado fleeting as the reality of our circumstances closed in around us. Lila squeezed my hand, her small fingers trembling, mirroring the turmoil that churned inside me. "What are you doing here?" I stammered, each word feeling heavy with unspoken resentments. Did he even know the whirlwind of chaos he had just re-entered? Carl's smile was laced with unease, a forced easiness that made my insides twist. "I came to help," he said, but his words felt flimsy, riding on a current of underlying tensions. "You have some nerve showing up now," Calvin spat, stepping protectively in front of us. "You left us. Do you even care what's happening?" "Of course I care." Carl's voice rose, snapping like a taut string, but the vulnerability in his eyes told a different story. "I've watched from afar, terrified of everything that's been happening, off everything you've had to deal with. But I can help. You have to trust me. My heart battled against the rush of pent-up anger and confusion. Why should we trust a man who had walked away when we needed him the most? Yet overshadowing my resentment was a flicker of longing for connection, a desire to bridge the chasm that had fractured our family. Elena, he softened, addressing me with a familiarity that felt alien yet comforting. There are things you don't know. Things about Franklin L. Weston and what he meant to our family, or rather, what you're meant to do with that legacy. That I felt my breath stutter in my chest, the memories of our mother's stories swirling back like dark clouds. What do you mean? What does this have to do with you being gone, or with that man in the photographs? Before he could answer, an unearthly howl pierced the night air, again an echo of the fear that coiled deep in my gut. We need to get inside, Calvin insisted, urgency propelling him forward. There are worse things out there, Carl interrupted, glancing toward the shadows creeping closer, as if they bore witness to the weight of our burgeoning conflict. Things that want what Franklin had. Things that want you. Us? Lilith's voice trembled, and I felt a surge of protectiveness that made me pull her closer. Why would anyone want us? Carl hesitated. The pause hung heavily between us like the distant rumble of thunder. Because your fate is intertwined with our family's legacy. Franklin was part of something great, something powerful. The stories your mother told weren't just tales. They were warnings. I studied him, shadows flickering across his face, revealing the dim outline of the vulnerability that lingered just beneath the surface. What did he do? People like him, Carl said, forcing the words through clenched teeth, they didn't just fight during times of war. Many fought battles that continued long after the guns fell silent. And that fight isn't over. There are those who seek to reclaim what he left behind. Calvin and I shared a glance, a silent communication unfolding rapidly in the space between us. This was deeper than we had imagined, knotting the threads of our family's past with present dangers we couldn't fully comprehend. The quest for understanding was morphing into something else, an Tyrellian obligation we hadn't asked for, yet one that was rushing toward us like an approaching storm. Then we can't go back inside, I said, the weight of the realization heavy on my shoulders. We have to face this. We need to know what we're dealing with. Carl's eyes widened, the flicker of pride mingling with concern. Elena, this is dangerous. Dangerous? It's already here. I shot back, my voice rising in defiance. Hiding won't protect us. It didn't protect you, did it? He stepped closer, desperation flickering behind his eyes. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is I end that moment. Something within me shifted, igniting with the spirit of the ancestors captured in the photographs strewn throughout the house. I was not merely the product of history. I was a fragment of bravery and defiance, woven into the fabric of resilience. Then let's run. I was surprised by the clarity of my voice, confident even as dread spiraled within me. But not away. Let's run toward the truth. Lilith's grip tightened on my hand, and I drew in a shaky breath, the shadows stretching in the growing darkness around us. We stood at the precipice of uncharted territory, ready to confront the lineage that encaged us both in heritage and newfound fears. As we turned back to face the gathering darkness, the distant howl came again. But this time it felt different, more daring, as if the night itself was beckoning us into a dance we could choose to embrace. Stay close, Calvin murmured fiercely, taking a step forward. What would we unravel, and what would we lose as we ventured deeper into the legacy we were now determined to uncover? But even as we moved together, a creeping doubt pricked at my mind. Would we be strong enough to confront not only the truths that remained hidden but the burdens that came with them? And as we stepped into the night, a new sound rose above the backdrop of the muted shadows, a whisper of clarity that tinged the air with foreboding, sending shivers down my spine. Two of them, I heard Carl murmur, his words almost lost in the fabric of the night. They're coming for you. A sickening realization took root, coiling around my heart. The fight was no longer just for our past. It was now a fight for our very future, a battle we hadn't yet even begun to comprehend. My world had narrowed to the tension coiling in the air as we stood against the encroaching darkness. Carl, Calvin, Lila, and I formed an unlikely alliance, tethered together not just by blood, but by an urgency to reclaim our stolen heritage. The shadows from which we had so recently fled morphed into something heavier, a lingering threat amassed from the remnants of our family's secrets. As we forged ahead, every contested breath filled me with a dreadful anticipation of what lay ahead. "Why did you come back, Carl?" I asked, forcing the words between clutching lungs. "After all this time, why now?" Carl met my gaze, his eyes shimmering with both gravity and a depth of regret. "Because some debts can't be buried forever," he replied, voice low but steady. "And before you uncover our truth, you deserve to know the weight of your ancestors' choices. I've been lost in the shades because I didn't confront my own demons, and I hoped by hiding, I could protect you from the fallout. But we can't afford to shield ourselves any longer," Calvin interjected, fear making the muscles of his jaw tighten. "We're in this together now, whether we like it or not." As if summoned by the very air thickening around us, another chilling howl echoed, flowing through the trees, a sign that our time was running short. Whatever lingered in the depths was closing in, and I felt the urgency spiral like a whirlpool, so raw and real it vibrated in my chest. "Are you going to run from this, Carl? Or fight?" Lila's voice trembled, but there was an unexpected strength woven through it. The innocence of youth collided with the harsh truth of our realistic, a poignant reminder that our choices had ramifications that could redefine the legacies we left behind. Carl hesitated before the pressure cracked through him. "I don't know how to fight the ghosts that haunt us," he finally admitted, shame mingling in the tone of his voice. Yet he took a bold step forward alongside Calvin. "But perhaps we don't have to stand alone." We turned to the shadows, inching closer, petty fears mingling with fierce resolve. Together, united against whatever darkness awaited us, we became not just a family, but a coalition of warriors ready to reclaim our narrative. Just then, something shattered near the back of the house, the glass harmonizing with the distant echoes of the night calling to us. "They're here," Calvin shouted, pushing forward, protectiveness threading through his being. We needed a plan, however hasty it felt. I rushed to the front door, flinging it open wide enough for the moonlight to pour in, illuminating the crumpled remnants of my grandfather's photographs scattered carelessly across the ground. Their faces stared back at me, ancestral warriors woven into our shared story, a reminder that we hadn't merely descended from heroes. We also held within us the capacity to reshape our own destinies. "Gather the photographs," I urged, urgency throbbing through my words like a heartbeat. "They might hold the key to understanding what we're up against. They might remind us who we are." We worked quickly, grasping the remnants of our family history between trembling fingers. Each image felt like a pulse, breathing life into the stories I had once adored, but now realized lay deeper than childhood fantasies. With every snap of our hands, I felt palpable energy flow through USA unity forged from our shared past. The fading echoes of the past called us closer together, and as I looked around, determination fortified our bond. We were not here to just defend. We were here to confront, fight for clarity, acceptance, and understanding. Lila gathered close, clutching the photograph of our grandfather in one hand, her face resolute in the glow of courage that blossomed within. "I'm ready," she declared fiercely as we moved back toward the encroaching darkness. The sounds of branches snapping sent shivers down my spine. And then, from the heart of the shadows, emerged beings clothed in shadows that bore the weight of fury and despair. They were hunters, seekers of the past, howling for retribution. Despite our fears, we stood firm, shoulders squared against the tide of shadows rushing toward us, the looming presence of our family history breathing life into our fight. "Here we stand," I shouted into the night, defiance ringing like a battle cry. "The legacies you seek won't bow to fear. We refuse to carry burdens that aren't our own." The surprised faces of those figures, once ominous in the dark, faltered for the briefest moment. I took it as a call for hope. The list of names and tales we carried served as shields, inspirations sharpened into weapons. "You want silence or truth," Calvin added, strength filling every syllable as he stepped into the forefront. Lila's voice pierced through, small yet powerful. "We are more than the stories you want to rewrite. Our family's legacy is ours to shape. A pulse thrummed in the air, and the figures lingered as if teetering on the brink of revelation. I could see the shared fear and regret mirrored in their eyes, the weight of similar stories that echoed through generations. A shared pain of their past colliding with our eagerness to understand. They weren't just shadows. They were fragments of unfinished stories, parts of generations that needed to heal. And no more secrets. Carl stepped forward, finally claiming his place among us. The shame washed from his voice. No more burying our truths beneath generations of despair. It's time, once and for all, to find healing in facing the legacies of bravery. One of the figures stepped into the light. I could discern a crown of stormy clouds in their eyes, shadows dancing endlessly. You think you've unearthed the past only to confront us? He spoke, voice swallowed by disarray. You don't know the true cost of seeking power. My heart quickened, but I held tight to the photographs, feeling their warmth seep into my skin like a long-forgotten embrace. Power can share, create, and build bridges if we allow it. It doesn't need to destroy. What you seek will shatter your very being. They cried out, shadows expanding menacingly around them. But in the face of their fury, the warmth of hope surged through me, ignited by Lila and Calvin's steadfast presence. And no more fear. I called out, resolve anchoring me in place. For all the sacrifices, struggles, and fire in our family's history, they deserve to be honored. They deserve a future that embraces every part of their story, not just the shiny facade. The air roiled, but in that moment, light began to seep through the darkness, shadows unraveling into threads of hope. The echoes of our grandfather and all those who came before filled the space, their spirits buoying us with resilience. We will not hide, I shouted, the words blazing free, carrying the promise of a new era woven from shards of lost histories reclaiming their rightful place. As the tension snapped like an escaping breath, those seeking to destroy us faltered, their shadows twisting into something fragile. And slowly, just slowly, with each declaration of truth and promise of community, the tides shifted. The encroaching darkness began to pull back, leaving us standing firm against its wake. Perhaps the true legacy of our forebears wasn't about valor in the sky, but the courageous call to awaken, understand, and embrace all parts of ourselves, the soaring and the fallen, the familiar and the forgotten. And in that powerful acceptance, I felt a bruised yet beating heart of our family history merge into one, united against the storm and the shattering calm that followed. As whispers of reconciliation filled the air, I turned to Calvin and Lila, closing my fingers around their hands tightly. We had clawed our way back from despair to possibility and beyond. Together, we will shape our future, I declared, a final wave of clarity washing over us, merging with the strength of all those who had come before. And with that resolute vow echoing, our family began to emerge anew, trailing the debris of old secrets behind, born from the courage of standing proud in the face of history. In the end, it wasn't fear we had to confront. It was the love woven into the fabric of our legacy. The gift of acceptance jazzing the chords of our growing bonds. Standing tall, we walked further into the light of our future, together crafting a path lit by the truths we had dared to embrace. As we stepped toward the horizon, ready to pen the next chapter of our story, I knew that despite the struggles we faced, we were finally free-cementing who we were meant to be, bathed in the warmth of understanding. And as I wrapped my arms tightly around Lila and Calvin, one thought echoed through me, a promise that felt as eternal as the stars above. No legacy must be a burden. Together, let us rise.